Hello and welcome to Economic Forum. My name is Tawanda Gudlanga. Our focus is on the 2020 midterm budget review with particular bias on the retail sector and understanding how Zimbabwe can move forward given some of the reforms that were unpacked in the August House. We have invited in the studio Mr. DENFORD MUTASHU, the president of the Confederation for Zimbabwe Retailers, who is also the chairman of the Super Brands Adjudication Committee. Sir, thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you for inviting me.
You were a panelist at the recent midterm budget review session, which was done over a webinar. And we had Professor Mthuli Ncube unpacking what he presented in Parliament. One key thing that was mentioned by the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe governor is that we're going to be seeing the stability of goods and services. Tell us more about that.
I think that is founded from the fact that, as you may be aware, the country, rather the economy, has recently adopted the foreign currency auction system, and which sort of is replacing the interbank market, which came through, of course, with quite a number of challenges. And before then, that we had the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe allocating, depending on needy areas of the economy. But so far, the government, through the Reserve Bank and the Ministry of Finance, has come up with a foreign currency auction system, and a lot of players, a lot of businesses, various stakeholders now that require foreign currency for them to import, for example, raw materials and other essential finished goods, drugs, etc. You've got to go through the bidding process. So it is believed that it is an efficient way of allocating the limited foreign currency that may be available at any particular time. And as you may be aware, the auction takes place every Tuesday of the week. If you check, quite a number of manufacturers have accessed the foreign currency via the auction system, and as well as the retail, wholesale, and distribution sector. They have accessed the foreign currency, and hence the argument by the governor to say or to believe that the price stability is going to be premised on the availability and efficient allocation of the foreign currency to those entities that are requiring to import raw materials.
You've been a retailer long enough. Reading through the trends, do you think prices are going to be fluid downwards for once?
We've already started seeing certain prices responding very well to the availability of foreign currency at affordable rates, because previously the majority of players in the business community were accessing foreign currency via the parallel market system, because the interbank didn't have a lot of supply. So the parallel market rates, by their very own nature, are speculative, unstable, and of course determined by a few in a room somewhere for their own selfish ends. And that sort of was defining the pricing on the market in an unfortunate way of defining prices in a market where real disposable incomes have not been growing. The purchasing power of the general populace has been quite squeezed owing to the inflationary environment that the economy went into. Basically, what we believe is that the availability of foreign currency has always been very fundamental, and this is why you saw pricing trends actually tracking the rate at the parallel market. But I'm happy to indicate that quite a number of those foreign currency dealers are actually complaining, and some have already changed trade. They've come to join the retail buying and selling of basic commodities. So that is quite significant, because the bulk of the trades that you would find on the parallel market were also fueled by quite a number of other businesses that were also finding a lot of solace in trading in cash that they collected from the general public, put a markup on a product. So that was sort of double dipping that was also taking place. So that is not a way that an economy should function. We definitely needed a bit of sanity. The measures that have come through, that have also been buttressed by the budget, indicate that the curtailing of the unproductive money supply in the economy via the mobile platforms, via, of course, other bank accounts that are not monitored, has been, it has been a challenge. It has been the bad thing of the challenges that the economy has been facing over a very long time. And I'm happy that price stability is achievable, and indeed we are beginning to see certain products. You saw bread coming down. I think recently it came down, and quite a number of products. We believe if we continue with this method, with this process, yes, prices will stabilize.
You raised something quite interesting. Key in this whole price madness is the manufacturer and the currency issue, of course. And one of the issues that have been raised had to do with speculative behavior that is coming from one point or the other. Where can we point to as the source of speculation? Is it from the manufacturer? Is it the retailer, the wholesaler? Who exactly has been doing much of the speculation?
We can't really be pointing fingers at this particular juncture. Safe to say we need to be very progressive and move forward and build on the stability that we are currently beginning to enjoy. And what I can safely say is that there's serious coordination at the present moment between the supply side and the retail sector to ensure that the supply of key basics is uninterrupted at any given time, and also affordability, where there has been a lot of moral suasion to begin to discuss around ensuring that no one should really be charging speculative prices in an environment where foreign currency right now is actually available, and it is actually accessible at a formal market. So I think, yes, you may have here and there certain aspects in our society that may continue to take advantage, and we've seen that those are actually still there, but with the direction that we're all collectively taking, because remember, at some stage, government, the private sector that included quite a number of BMOs, including the Confederation of Zimbabwe Retailers, and of course the Consumer Council of Zimbabwe, we came together and set in order to actually try and discuss the way forward in terms of the price stability.
Let's talk about it some more in the second segment as we look at the retail sector and, of course, understanding if indeed we're going to see some normalcy coming home. Join us then. Welcome back. The mid-term budget review announced that 5,000 now becomes tax-free. And the big question is this offering consumers a bigger basket this time around? We have in the program Mr. DENFORD MUTASHU, who is the president of the Confederation for Zimbabwe Retailers. He's also the chairman of the Super Brands Adjudication Committee. Before we went to the break, we were about to touch on speculators, and you say we have to be progressive. But what still remains sticky, DENFORD, is that across the retail sector, there seems to be some arbitration that is happening. There seems to be some speculative behavior that is quite rampant. What is being done to address that challenge?
The reality is that if you look at the formal retail sector players, a lot of them you've been compliant with policies that government introduce at any particular time, and even inputting into some of those policies. And you may also be aware that about 70%, more than even more, is informal. And a lot of the players in the informal sector, especially under the current environment, may also wish to take advantage because their activities largely are not monitored. And this is the reason why we have said one of the fundamental areas in order for us to address the economic ills that we're faced as a nation is to actually have a lot of effort on addressing the informalization or the informality of the economy. Because even if you come up with a very good policy, sometimes the policy works very well, but only for about 30% of the economy that is formal. But the generality of the businesses continue to live outside of the formal cycles and continue to also fuel conditions of arbitrage.
It's quite simple, really, DENFORD, because if a manufacturer supplies a wholesaler, the expectation is that they are a registered wholesaler. And a wholesaler also must pass on that sort of check, if I may use it, as part of the monitoring mechanism. Why do we not have it enforced, where before we used to have traders coming with their licenses to prove that indeed they were bona fide formal traders?
Most of the manufacturers actually follow that route. Remember, previously we used to have a formal channel which detected that the manufacturer would only give to a wholesaler. Then the wholesaler would give to a retailer,
yes,
who would then sell to the final consumer. But because of the economic changes that have happened over the years, that has actually broken down. A manufacturer can sell directly to a formal or an informal player in terms of means of payments that the player is actually using. Sometimes a formal big chain player may not have US dollars or cash that the manufacturer or the supplier demands or may wish to have for them to be able to procure raw materials. So in such a scenario, they end up, of course, selling the goods to those that may not be formal, as long as they've got access to foreign currency or cash. So that has actually defined the manner and the way that business has been conducting itself over the last few years.
Now let's talk about the price regime itself. We were in a monocurrency scenario. Now the United States dollar has come back, and that probably ushering again a multi-currency scenario. But what has been common between the regimes is always the multi-pricing system, where if you're paying using your bond, there is a price for it. Using the money, mobile money transactions, there is a premium to it. Where there is the US dollar, it is rated not with the auction rate, but instead with another rate altogether. Why do we still find this happening?
What we have seen is that in the majority of cases, there has been that confusion in terms of pricing. And I think in the discussion on the midterm post-budget discussion, it was also very topical because business currently seeking guidance properly and appropriately by government on whether we still focused on the de-dollarization, as was announced a few months back, or we are actually, the economy is re-dollarizing. The reality, of course, Tawanda, is that the economy, while we've been focused on the long-term de-dollarization path, there has been a lot of appetite for continued acceptance and circulation and use of the foreign currency, predominantly the US dollar, especially when you come to the northern part of the country. But if you are in the southern part of the country, there has been circulation, increased circulation of the South African rand, and then on the other side, you also have the Botswana pula, but insignificantly. But that is actually a problem. It remains a challenge. But we are saying the auction system has been running, I think, for about 3 to 4 weeks now, and we expect that as we move forward, stability in terms of the pricing itself, the methods of pricing and the way that business actually input their costs and everything will change, especially because the reason why there has been the multi-tier pricing was in order to harness or to access the elusive foreign currency for them to also price recover and for them also to ensure that they stabilize their supply chain.
And the basket, certainly it should have an impact given the fact that the Minister of Finance and Economic Development announced that it will be a $5,000 tax-free threshold. Does that have any impact looking at the way the economy is currently operated?
Yes, there was a huge attempt to release a lot of incomes towards rather in the hands of the consumers in the budget, to where the tax-free threshold was raised from 2,000 Zimbabwean dollars to 5,000 Zimbabwean dollars. But our worry, of course, is the gap between the 5,000 and the current basket, the consumer basket for a family of 6, which is actually consummated by the Consumer Council of Zimbabwe. Currently, I think it's sitting at around 13,700 Zimbabwean dollars. So that gap again may point otherwise. So we need also to always, make sure that we play catch up with that basket, because it then defines the spending patterns in the home. It also defines the real disposable incomes for each particular individual, and also it also has got to give us a guideline even in terms of salaries, which has also become very topical across the private and public sector, the issue of salaries. Yes, recently civil servants have started receiving the US dollar, payments, $75 for the civil servants, and of course for pensioners, I think it's $30. But again, it is the modalities. How is it going to be operationalized is one area that we are also discussing right now with government to ensure that there is a smooth operationalization of the allowance.
Join us in the third and final segment as we seek to understand competitiveness from a brand perspective. Join us then. Welcome back to the third and final segment, where we are focusing on the retail sector, and we have invited Mr. DENFORD MUTASHU, the president of the Confederation for Zimbabwe Retailers. Before you went to the break, you spoke about arbitrage, we spoke about manufacturers and the relationship that is there with the retail players. But let's understand the products themselves. What constitutes our products? Is it the local component or the foreign component?
Well, that's a very tight one. We had made significant progress on building local brands, and quite a number of products have been resilient and have stood the test of time, which is commendable, and we actually wish those to continue on that path. But obviously, you had another fair share of imports coming through to compete with our local products. And currently, at some point, it was 70% locally manufactured goods versus 30% imported at the time where there were restrictions on imports. But as we moved on, there has been a bit of liberalization, and a lot of imports have started coming through. And to that regard, it may not surprise you to find that at a particular shelf, there may be more of the imported products on that shelf than you would find of the local products. So at policy level, we need then to reactivate and accelerate the implementation of the local content policy. And that is actually currently is got to move along with the Zimbabwe industrial development policy. those are fundamental, because for us, without the local content policy, it may be very difficult for us then to stabilize this value chain. Because remember, currency is just but one aspect of this whole pricing mechanism. The fundamental issue, Tawanda, is production. We may have a stable market in terms of the auction system, but without producing locally, without supporting, stimulating local production to meet local demand and for exports, then we may continue to fall short. So this is something that is very fundamental. If we could have government buying local, institutions buying local, Zimbabweans buying local, but of course that is dependent on availability, on quality, on affordability. So those have been quite critical and quite characteristic over the years, because it may be of quality, it may be available, but the pricing aspect has been very unstable, and hence consumers ended up now making a hard choice to continue to procure or to buy a foreign product. But the COVID-19 pandemic has actually taught many economies, including ours, that you can get to a point where you are supposed to be self-sufficient, stand on your own. Lockdowns have actually taught us that each country sometimes require to power its own engines, its own economic engines, and now prioritize its own at the expense of others. So this is the reason why, as Zimbabwe, at this particular juncture, we should certainly take advantage of this and build a solid foundation which is premised on a vibrant, strong local industry, which is supported by the value chain. But we need to take the value chain approach, so that takes me then even to the farm, agriculture. Robust agricultural output that feeds into the industry, then the industry churns out goods locally manufactured into the retail, and then the consumers can easily access those at affordable prices.
But the big question also that arises has to do with the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact, given the fact that South Africa is hardest hit and it is our biggest trading partner. Are we should we be, pressing alarm bells now, or it's still safe that we can still trade with them sufficiently enough for consumers to, within the distant future, continue buying at competitive prices?
I think we need to localize. Let's look internal, beginning with revamping our health our facilities, so that our people can access affordable health, quality health locally, and even the procurement of the key drugs and medicines should actually be localized, and hence the local producers, local manufacturers should then receive priority in terms of ensuring that if we've got a stimulus package that has got to be directed towards that. We cannot ring alarm bells. Why? Because we fortunately had been building in terms of the local industry. And that should actually it should be supported, because it has formed a solid foundation. Remember, so far, a lot of the products, be it the bread, we used to buy bread from South Africa at some point. We used to buy eggs from South Africa, and now these are all local. Chickens used to come from as far as Argentina, Brazil, etc. But all that now is local. So, alongside devolution, Tawanda, I'm looking at a scenario where we begin to strategically power growth points, rural district councils, so that they can produce, feed the community, supply the whole community, and even export it to other communities. So that is a fundamental matter, Tawanda, because without addressing the fundamental matter of production, we may continue to run in cycles.
You are chairman of the adjudication committee that focuses on Zimbabwe's biggest brands. Are you likely going to see that happening in 2020, given the sort of squeeze and the crunch that has been there? Is there still room for us to be looking at competition and coming out with the best in this COVID-19 scenario?
We already have unveiled top 200 super brand products, and those actually form the basis of who Zimbabwe is in terms of its self-sufficiency, in terms of its production of key products, key basics. And we are happy with what the local companies have continued to do. A lot of these brands are not only found locally, but they've actually began to dominate in other countries. Like if you go to Zambia, you go to Malawi, you go to Tanzania, you will find Zimbabwean products. And this is something that we have got to support, because remember, we also need to earn foreign currency. The manufacturing sector has got to contribute. The retail sector has also got to contribute. And every Zimbabwean has got to contribute to build the Zimbabwe we want.
DENFORD MUTASHU, thank you so much for coming through to the program.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, we've come to the end of the program where we invited Mr. DENFORD MUTASHU, the president of the Confederation for Zimbabwe Retailers, who is also the chairman of the Super Brand Adjudication Committee, where we were focusing on the retail sector in this moment where the post-mid-term budget review has been done by all key stakeholders, as well as the forex auction system and, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. Join us again next time on Economic Forum. My name is Tawanda Gudlanga.